Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to the Disconnected. I am here with, and I'm going to try this for the first time on air with him. Let's see if I can do this. Eugenio Ercolani.
Perfect.
I even got the
Amazing.
chef's kiss. Amazing. This is somebody that I have really become acquainted with over the last year, with his work at least, and I have been more and more impressed with what I'm reading and hearing. Producer, contributor to all of these. You work in acquisitions, interviewing people, and pretty much everything that leads to us holding all of these wonderful boutique releases. So thank you so much for giving your time and coming on here to spend some time talking
Oh,
about
it's amazing. Absolutely happy to be here and chat, shoot the breeze.
them. If you don't know, right now he is located in Rome, right?
I am located in Rome. My life really at the moment, well, for the past few years, has been split between London and Rome. So at the moment, I'm in Rome, working. In fact, I'm going to be starting a principal photography on a kind of a docu-film hybrid documentary with kind of a cinema twist, a film twist within it. We're going to start principal photography in less than 48 hours on Monday, and it will be on the career of Luc Mirinda, French actor who became big in the early 70s, first half of the 70s in Italy. And it's quite an undertaking. It's a big project. It's quite an ambitious documentary. It's set to be released in theaters, so it's not an extra, but people might like to know that we have quite an array of interviewees: Tinto Brass, Sergio Martino, Eugenio Labiso, who's just was a ridiculously prolific editor. He's the guy who edited The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and all of the Dania films, Dania production. So yeah, it's quite an ambitious project, and I'm going to be shooting that throughout the rest of November. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
So you have worked on a lot of the stuff. What do you tell people you do? Because I'm curious how the people that are in this industry, how they even describe their job, because it feels like you probably have like 14 different part-time jobs essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when I tell people who are not collectors of physical media, I mean, my girlfriend, my partner, she is absolutely not a collector of Blu-rays, although she appreciates it. And so when we kind of go out and the question arises like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I say, well, I'm a freelance producer for home video releases. I kind of do the extras. The Usually the answer is, oh, are they still doing Blu-rays? That's it's quite a disquieting experience, because you've got like a slice of the population that sees these things as completely obsolete, and really, is there any money, like and then you've got collectors and people within the business who dedicate their life to the preservation of films and the restoration and getting these films out in the best edition possible. And it's very difficult sometimes to kind of gel those two realities together. Um, I I define myself as a film historian slash producer, but I you have to wear a lot of hats. So especially when I started out, I've been doing this now for a little less than 6 years. Although the first 3 years I was ADing, I was an AD, both in Italy, mostly in Italy to be fair, but also occasionally abroad. And then I've been doing this, working on extras full time for the past 3 years. So, and and yeah, I was saying, you wear a lot of hats. You sometimes have to improvise as a camera operator. You end up doing subtitles. You connect rights holders with labels, and it's very dynamic. Every project and every label is a different relationship, requires different tasks and roles, and it's ever changing. You never really do the same set of things every time.
Dynamic is probably the best word to put onto this, because not only are the labels different, but I imagine the experience with most of the films themselves can be very different, because where the reels are kept, where the rights holders are, the actual ability for people to sign these over, and then on top of that, the willingness of people to participate in extras can be a completely different jaunt, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, when it comes to finding the rights of films, that's what can be very complex. Another aspect is getting what you want from the rights holders. So, uh, they will give you so many obstacles. So, we'll give you this film, but for subs, or you have to pay for the scan aside, or we'll give you this film, but only if you buy these two films
Right.
for that amount of money more. So you have to kind of, it's really uh, it's a whole song and dance to try to get what you actually want. Not to mention some of these big companies in Italy, but the same goes for UK or US. Uh, is their core business is not this.
Right.
Sometimes they're production companies, sometimes they are distributing companies, and this is kind of a side thing for them. So they don't prioritize. So it's like, oh, they want the rights for this film we didn't even know we had in our catalog, and so sometimes they will take months to answer because their money, their core business is elsewhere. So
Right.
it's not really a priority for them to answer. So it's tricky. It needs a lot of patience. But but yeah, I mean, it kind of comes with the territory. You have to deal with these companies, and sometimes you will find that the rights holders, they're willing to give you the film for a reasonable price, but they don't have the actual material. They don't have the master, so you have to find who owns the master. And there's a saying, um, really, the real rights holders is the right holder is the person with the master, is the person with the physical copy of the film. So sometimes you end up spending so much more time and money for not my money, but the label's money, to kind of convince two people to work together. So the company that actually stores the materials, and then you've got the rights holders. So it can get very tricky, and that's the reason why some films, even major cult items, have not been released. Because we can't we can't find the material. We can't actually find the copy of the film, or the rights holders are being unreasonable, um, asking too much, or taking too much time to do things. Or another option is, some films are entangled into a web of like failed companies. You have to kind of follow the paperwork, and
Right.
then it kind of ended up, a certain film has ended up in a company, in the catalog of a company who's gone bankrupt. And so that's a completely whole, that's a whole different scenario to deal with. So it's tricky. And as far as the other point you were making, convincing people, it's can be tricky. It can be very tricky at times. I mean, it depends. I mean, obviously, over the years, I've established a relationship with
Right.
a lot of people, so they trust me, and they're fine with being interviewed, and they're very collaborative. But at times you find people, that are busy, people that, don't want to talk about that film. They don't have a problem being interviewed, but they don't want to talk about that film. And I think it says a lot of the fact that, sometimes some films are released and don't have many extras. And the reason is because, people didn't want to talk about it. They were either ashamed or, this happens, I'm afraid, a lot with actresses, for example.
Right.
They have families and, maybe they don't feel comfortable talking about films that are a bit risque, in which there was heavy doses of nudity or kind of very strong sexual overtones, and they don't feel comfortable talking about that.
Right.
But yeah, I personally like inventing when it's possible, when I have the time and the budget to do so. I like inventing kind of, like, for example, recently, Violence in a Women's Prison was released from 88 Films, and we had this massive interview with Claudio Fragasso. It's 49 minutes long. And I'm really happy about that interview. He kind of is uncensored, as you'd expect from Fragasso. And then there's an interview with the AD, but I didn't think it was enough. But I couldn't kind of find anybody else to interview, so we did a little special, about 20 minutes long, on this obscure figure called Franco Caracciolo, who has an incredible. He played. He's an extremely problematic figure because he was openly homosexual. He was gay, but he was required in the films he did to play this absolutely offensive gay stereotype. And he's in loads of films. He's obviously in this film. He is quite a disturbing aspect of this film. His role really is cringy, to say the least. And so I worked with a friend of mine and a Italian gay association in Milan that had a lot of information about this actor who died of HIV in the early 90s. And so we did a little special. It's called The Gay Prince. So I like, kind of in finding ways of putting interesting content. And I'm fully aware of the fact that, most people might read that and go, I don't give a fuck about this guy. I hardly know who he is, what he's done. But the 10%, 8% that, kind of wants to dig in and kind of dwell with these obscure figures of Italian cult cinema, it's basically there's no way they can access any sort of information if not through these kind of crazy ideas I have sometimes. So I really try and do the best I can to provide quirky, strange information, wherever it's possible, because as I said, you need the time and the budget.
Right. Those historical and contextual interviews and featurettes, they really provide so much to these releases to make them rich and educational to a point that I always get frustrated when people say they buy these and just watch the film and not some of the extras, because they, at least for me, watching the extras will, first of all, it will make me appreciate the film way more than just by watching through the film with my brain dead mind paying attention to it for 90 minutes. But hearing something like that and seeing why some of the choices were made, it makes everything just so much more real and human. And I just publicly thank you for that. It's the kind of thing that really gives credence to some of these films that people don't really understand until they dive in. So definitely thank you.
No, it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and sometimes it's the weirdest, most even the kind of the really, really bad films that I have more fun doing extras for, because like recently this year I produced extras for a German label It has English, and it's a really good edition, I have to admit. Breeders, Tim
Nice.
Kincaid film, and from 1988, I believe, and it's an American film. It's not very good. It's cheesy. It's all over the place, but it's kind of one of those films that I saw in my formative years. Kind of when I went to rent films in the VHS era, and you watch loads of stuff like this. Like David Dicuto and Jim Wynorski and Tim Kincaid and these kind of really sleazy like 80s films. And growing up, I was like, who did these? Who?
Right.
And so the idea of kind of providing extras. In this case, we've got an interview with Ed French, who is a Oscar-nominated, Emmy Award-winning special effects designer who did the special effects for this. And we've also got Frances Rains, who's one of the leads. She also happens to be the nephew of Claude Rains. And so that's who we interviewed. And so the idea to provide extras for these obscure films and is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of more gratifying in a way than being the 107th person to do extras for, I don't know, The Beyond, which is great. But you're part of, like, there've been loads of people before you. There'll be loads after. We'll never stop producing stuff for that sort of film. But with Breeders, it's kind of like it's Breeders. Like, who would have ever imagined a limited edition media book this lavishly produced of Breeders a few years ago? I mean, I wouldn't have. So yeah, it's
you are the first contributor to bring up media books on this channel, so I have to ask if you know the question or the answer to this question. Why is Germany so hot on media books and no one else is? Because I would love to see media books elsewhere, but they seem to be the only one. And I've got 40 of them because I love them. I sit here with my phone and read the booklets with Google Lens to translate it for me word for word.
Germany is a market I work a lot in. I work with a lot of German labels, and Germany is a world unto itself. I mean, it's so weird. I mean, they literally, labels in Germany don't care about making their releases kind of appetizing for other markets because their market is just so big that it's enough. It's such a massive home video market with its own rules and a whole massive list of labels. So I mean, for example, the X-rated, which is kind of a historically relevant label because I mean, X-rated in the VHS era was releasing stuff that people were desperately looking for. So I remember, people traveling to Germany from Italy just to kind of grab an X-rated release. And they're really big, and a lot of labels in Germany are, with the kind of softbox VHS kind of thing. The VHS softbox. VHSs in Italy didn't have as many like that, but apparently this thing transitioned into the DVD and Blu-ray era, and yeah, they have their own kind of internal logics. I mean, I like media books. I do like media books. I mean, a label that does really good media books, apart from Manolis Entertainment, which I didn't mention, which did Breeders, and now what else was released recently? Oh yeah, Panic Bacterium.
Yep.
Which I believe was released a few years ago in the States from Code Red.
It was.
I'm not mistaken there. Is it Code Red?
Yep.
It is. Okay, yeah. So apart from Manolis, another label that does really good media books, I mean, they're super pretty, is Wicked Visions. Wicked Visions, sorry, Wicked Vision.
Yes.
Wicked Vision does amazing media books. I did loads with them. Recently, Sinbad of the Seven Seas, um, the Night Porter. Last year I did. Oh no, this year. Night Porter was last year. This year, Yeti, Giant of the 20th Century. So yeah, it's. I don't know why. I don't know why they're so big on media books. Although the question probably is why aren't other territories
Exactly.
equally interested in media books? The first answer is probably they do cost more. They do cost more to produce. They are more complicated to package into boxes to distribute because they're bigger, they're bulkier, they're
More
rectangle,
fragile.
they're more fragile. The corners kind of can snap or break or whatever, and so bend. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. They can bend. So I believe it comes down to money. I think it just easier and safer and more cost efficient to release them in other ways, other box sets or Amorai.
Right. That makes sense. I think the first time I read about you, that really caught my eye was in The Tough Ones. I'd heard your name previously, but you did an interview with Umberto Lenzi in this one, and you wrote a little introduction to it,
I
and
did.
it was amazing. It is something that when something comes out on Lenzi, I always try to get it into my veins as fast as possible because it is so fascinating to read up on somebody that's had such an impact. 88 films. Who else have you had such a major impact on some of their releases? I know you got 88 films. You just started with Vinegar Syndrome. You've done stuff with Fractured Visions, a bunch of media
Yeah.
books. Who else is out there under your resume?
Okay, so the ones I have a long-standing relationship with, and I feel part of the family in a way, is definitely 88 Films, No Less Entertainment in Germany, Fractured Visions. I'm definitely warming up quickly to Vinegar Syndrome. The first two collaborations have been very fruitful. Then I do. I've had an on and off relationship because it's a way more complex system. But the things I have done with Arrow have been very, very very nice. I mean, I remember fondly the massive undertaking that was Beyond the Door, the Beyond the Door limited edition. That was a fun, complicated project, but a fun one. Then, oh, of course, I have a brilliant relationship, and I love working with them. We have loads of titles. I mean, literally seven films still to be released. I did extras for Cauldron Films.
Oh, nice.
Cauldron, I was with them from the beginning, pretty much, with American Rickshaw, and then The Crimes of Black Cats, and then Contraband. Now they've announced a month ago. They've announced a whole bunch of titles, and
Yeah.
I'm working on those at the moment. Pretty much done. And then they're kind of other labels where I've done something. It's more on a title by title situation because maybe they don't release a lot of stuff I can help them with.
Right.
So Wicked Vision, I've literally worked on every single Italian film they've done for the past 2 years, but they don't release a lot of Italian films. So
Right.
I could say I have a great relationship with them. The same goes for Turbine in Germany, or Cape Light Pictures, again, Germany. I've done a couple of things for Severin. I've done one thing for Synapse. So yeah, it's and sometimes some labels they'd rather go archival. Other labels have other people doing extras for them, other
Right.
producers. So, but it's I kind of jump around. I can't reveal what I'm working on, but I've just 2 months ago received a massive commission from Indicator.
Oh, nice.
So a lot of Indicator titles with my extras will be released next year. So yeah, it's.
One
Oh, by the way, I mean you mentioned Lency, so that's my cue to plug Troy Howard's book. I did the forward for "Make Them Die Slowly," which I'm happy is finally released and finding homes.
I don't have it in front of me. I have it here, and this was my time to plug. Troy's actually going to be on the channel in the next 2 weeks at some point, and we're going to be talking about the book quite deeply. So exciting times for a lot of people that are in this industry, because physical media is far from dead, and one of the reasons we can see that is one of the labels you didn't mention is a new one, Treasured Films. This is out of the UK, I believe, correct?
Indeed, it is a UK-based label, um, and it recently, a week ago probably, announced their first title, which is The Last Hunter, Anthony M. Dawson, Antonio Margheriti, and yeah, it happened completely out of the blue. I was in London and I was at Darkfest, and I had brought over to Darkfest, I'd brought over Ruggero Deodato and Zora Kirova. And there were all, obviously, as one would expect, there were loads of stands and, people selling all sorts of stuff. And I started a conversation, I struck up a conversation with Graham Lloyd. And he was like, I want to do my own label. I was like, yeah, that's great. And no, I'm going to contact you. I want you to produce extras for it. I was like, sure. Here's my email. But it's not like I didn't take him seriously, but you hear this sort of stuff a lot. One day I'm going to do my own label. I'm going to do that, or we're definitely going to work together at some point. It's like you take it with a pinch of salt. But then he did contact me and was like, this is a bunch of films I want to release. What do you think? And I gave him my feedback, and then The Last Hunter was picked, and we hit the ground running. Unfortunately, the only kind of really sour spot about the whole Last Hunter Treasured Films is the fact that I wasn't able to get John Steiner on board. And I love John Steiner. He's kind of in my eyes, is the kind of the quintessential cult actor, and he really delivers the goods. I mean, he
Right.
is that theater stage trained actor. He was incredibly talented, and I literally had an appointment with him. I had organized everything with a camera operator. Everything was set up for Thursday, and we had talked on the phone numerous times, and we had a phone appointment on that Monday, so 3 days before the interview, just to confirm things, and just have a chat. And that's when I discovered he had died the previous day on Sunday in a car accident. And it was doubly kind of frustrating, because I had been wanting to interview him in a long time. And the
Right.
first time I contacted him recently, I mean, about a month and a half, probably, if that, before the car accident that killed him, he had said he wasn't really convinced. He didn't really want to do an interview, and I played a card I usually don't play, because I don't like to, and generally it can backfire. which I told them I was the grandson of Giulio Petroni, who directed the very first Italian film he made, which is Blood and Guns with Orson Welles and Thomas Milian. Fans of
Wow.
westerns will, I'm 100% sure, will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's in the not that that actually gives it value. I mean, but it is in the 20 best westerns list by Tarantino. And so that was the film that brought him to Italy. And actually, Giulio Petroni gave him his first, not only his first Italian film, but his first major role. He was exclusively a television actor, mostly a stage actor, and had appeared in a handful of films, but either uncredited or really bit parts. And once he knew that, he said, "Yes, let's do it. Yes." And didn't ask any money for it as well. He was doing it. He was committed, and then he died just a few days before in the car accident. So that was really, really frustrating and sad. But besides that, we do have a strong lineup for this release. Me and Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson, we recorded an audio commentary. I also put together a video essay on the film. We've got interviews with Margie Newton, with Franco Migalizzi, who did the soundtrack, with Edoardo Margheriti, Massimo Vanni, who's a stunt coordinator. There are 2 photo galleries I managed to put together, and there's a booklet where both me and Troy participate. So it's a nice package. And also I managed to connect Graham with the rights holders of The Outsider, which is a feature-length documentary on the career of Antonio Margheriti. So we're talking about, audio commentary aside, probably nearly 2 hours, 3 hours of special content.
Nice.
It was a
For a first
nice
release, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very good. I mean, Graham really didn't hold back anything. He gave it 100%. It's. I'm very curious to. I'm really hoping people do appreciate it. I'm sure it's gonna sell well.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see all the details, see what they follow that up with. It's a great first title, one that I think will pique a lot of interest for sure. Is there anything else coming up that you can shed light that you might be contributing on? Obviously, stuff that hasn't been announced yet, you can't, but anything that has been that you'd like to speak about?
I can announce what the extras will be because the film has been announced, but not the extras. I can announce the extras for Tentacles.
Oh, nice.
So we've got a 35-minute interview with Ovidio Giassonidis, obviously the director, co-producer, and co-writer of the film. We've got a 20-minute, roughly 25-minute interview with Roberto De Torre Piazzoli, who's the DOP.
Very nice.
We've got a 15-minute interview, but a very dense one, with Nicoletta Ercole, who's the costume designer. And then we've got something I'm very happy with, which is going to be about an hour and 5 minutes. So it's a very, very long kind of special featurette, which is with kind of a hidden secret of Italian genre cinema. His name is Alvaro Passeri, also known as Al Passeri, and he's a special effects designer, special effects artist, who started his career in films actually as a production designer in the early 70s, very young, doing sculptures. I believe among his first films, as in that capacity, I think there was Caligula by Tinto Brass. And then he passed on and became a special effects designer, and he worked with everybody. He worked with Fulci, with Deodato, with Dario Argento, Joe D'Amato. He worked on, he directed a handful of films that are weird as fuck, and I mean, very entertaining. I mean, absolutely low budget and weird, but I do suggest people, they're called Creatures from the Abyss, is one, and Flight to Hell. And he is amazing. I mean, I knew I was onto something when I talked to him on the phone. And so when I did go there with the camera operator, I said, we're going to take an afternoon here. And we did. I think we went away with about 3 hours worth of footage.
Nice.
Because this guy, I mean, apart from the interview, I mean, he showed us this massive kind of soundstage he has, these offices and all these kind of weird gadgets, and so it's going to be quite a special feature. And he did obviously the special effects of Tentacles, and that was actually his first film as a special effects designer, Tentacles. So yeah, so it's that's the package for that. Then there'll also be a audio commentary with myself, Troy, and Nathaniel.
Nice.
So, which we actually going to record this evening. Well, I mean, this evening for me is going to be like early afternoon, probably for Troy and Nathaniel. But yeah, so there we go. That's Tentacles.
That's awesome, and it's going to be a much better release than what was put out in the U.S. because they barely put anything on the disc that came out here. So I can't wait.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it completely vanilla?
I believe so. I think there may have been a trailer, if that. Yeah, I don't really count that. It's just nice to see some companies still willing to put stuff into stuff like Tentacles. And to be honest, we're getting to that age where a lot of the people that affected these releases, they're going to be passing on. So these special effects, not just the special effects one, but all of the features, they are vastly important because we have to archive the people that were a part of this and not just the film itself, because it can give that context that allows us to learn and to do things better for all of our films in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And also there's not only death, but also health issues, mental issues, interviews. It might not seem like that, but for a person who's a lot older, somebody in their 80s or even 90s, interviews take a chunk out of you. As much as I try to make it a pleasurable experience for them, they have to stand straight. They have a microphone, they've got lights on their face, which is particularly difficult during the summer. They have to remember always, to look at the right, to look at me. They have to repeat the kind of the topic we're talking about, the subject of the question. So, for somebody in their late 80s, interviews can be stressful. As I said, I mean, we try to make it as positive and nice and comforting as we can, but it does take a chunk of energy out of them. So,
well, that's sorry to cut you off there. Just curious, is there anybody that is let me scratch that because I don't want to get too morbid with it. First off, is there any film that you can share that is locked up in rights problems, like you mentioned earlier, that you wish we could see a good release of?
Loads of films are locked into rights hell. Well, I mean, the obvious one is, I mean, actually, more than one film by Pupi Avati. I mean, obviously, The House with the Laughing Windows would be one. Another film that is very complicated. well, actually, it's not complicated in itself. It's just it's going to be hard to unblock the situation. Is the Arcane Enchanter, which quite a few labels are interested in. It's a mid-90s Pugliavati horror film, very atmospheric. And I know that, I mean, I've been approached by a few labels, but the problem is Aurelio De Laurentiis, Filmauro, the company who owns not only that film, actually, quite a big chunk of Pugliavati's career, they're not willing. They don't want to. They just
Right.
don't want to give the rights. And so, now I am asking help to Pugliavati himself, and maybe with Pubi's help, we'll be able to make things right. Although, yeah, Filmauro is a tough cookie. But there's also, on the other hand, there's also a lot of interest for Pugliavati recently. And that's why I was awkwardly grabbing something here. Zedda.
Yeah, just came out from 88 Films.
From 88 Films, and not All Souls Except the Dead, or All Deceased Except the Dead.
Yep.
So that's 2 Pugliavati films released, pretty much, I mean, back to back nearly. So there is a lot of, I mean, there is an interest behind Pugliavati. So
I
I
got
think
All Deceased on the way, and I cannot wait for that one.
Which one?
All Deceased, except for the dead.
Yeah. That's one I was amazed. I couldn't believe it when they told me, I had to produce extras for that. I couldn't believe it. It was really a film I could have never imagined. It's even in Italy, it's extremely niche.
Right.
It's not a famous Pugliavati film by any means. It's very much for aficionados of Pugliavati, or a certain kind of like weird, quirky horror films from the 70s. So yeah, that was mind blowing when they told me, yeah, we acquired All Deceased Except the Dead.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to be able to talk for hours and hours with you, because I feel like I could, but I got to be respectful to both of our time. I hope eventually in the next 6 or 7 months, maybe we can get you back on again to do another talk.
Whenever you want.
Best of luck on the
I'm in.
documentary, though. That's really exciting that you're working on that.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time, and everybody check out. Gosh, we got Fractured Visions, we got 88 Films, newly on Vinegar Syndrome releases, this and Don't Open Till Christmas. All of the German labels. The 88 Films seems to be the biggest stable right now because they hit so many Italian films, which is great. I just hope they keep them coming.
Yeah, no, they are. Oh, believe me, they are. They will.
Good to hear. Thank you again, and from everybody.
It's been great.
Please look out for his work, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.